It's so funny, the world of human design and the world of human design statistics. Type, which is what we're really here about today because you're all generators. Type is something that's been substantiated scientifically. That is what we know, that we have certain genetic constructs, and we know that there's 4 basic ones. And out of that, human design has strategies in order to allow those beings to be able to operate that way. What's fascinating is statistics. 70% of humanity are generators. You truly are the world. You are truly the world in a way that you can hardly imagine. Everything about the nature of life is dependent on all of you. And this morning I was doing a room full of manifestors, and there were very few of them, and the energy was very still. And here I am in a room full of generators, and there's a lot of them here. And I was born with a sacral center that's totally white. No activations in it, none whatsoever. So I'm somebody who feels your energy very deeply. And when I walked in here, it was such a transition for me in terms of the energy. There is a buzz in here that is unique. I know this buzz. And I have a great love of the energy that lies in all of you because I do know it so well. And what I can offer you is a chance to transform your lives, and to transform your lives in a way that you can hardly imagine, and to truly be able to transform your lives quickly and in a way that really allows you to become what you really are, something the generators truly do not know. The not-self generator is a great slave and has been taken advantage of from the beginning of time. You are the great workers, you are the great laborers, you're the ones that can keep on, keeping on, keeping on, keeping on. And usually somebody else is benefiting from you keeping on, keeping on, keeping on, and you're bitching all the way. I don't like doing it, I don't like my job, I don't like my lover, I don't like my dog, whatever the case may be. There is a continual frustration with what it is to be a slave. And you've been conditioned to be slaves from the moment that you came into the world. From the moment that you came into the world, you were conditioned to be slaves because nobody treated you correctly. Nobody. Nobody. I've learned a lot in the 15 years since I had the revelation of human design. I've learned a lot about human beings. I've learned about their capacities. It's clear to me that nobody has an easier path to being themselves, to being awake, than generators. Nobody. I have watched generators wake up. It's quite startling. At the same time, generators are the most ignorant people I have ever met. And ignorant in the sense that they know literally nothing about who they are. Nothing about who they are. That they're deep, 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 deep into the conditioning. I will shortly and briefly show you how the conditioning works so that I can make sense out of the generator strategy for you. Whenever you see that center colored in red, the moment you see that colored in red, you're a generator. I'll talk a little later about the fact that there are 2 kinds of generators, but regardless, the moment you see that center colored in red, you're a generator. Now understand what that means. The sacral center is the most phenomenal thing that we have as an instrument within us. It is the thing that generates life. That is, it is the life mechanism itself. It's also the thing that degenerates into death. It is the mechanism through which life is created, because at its core are our sexual capacities, our creative sexual capacities to make more. The sacral center is really something, but it's a motor. It's not an awareness. It's a motor. And in understanding it's a motor, it's so important to understand that the whole essence of the sacral center is that it operates out of response. It responds to life. It has respond ability. This is the key to understanding the nature of the sacral. And because everything about the sacral is about responding, that the only truth that comes into anyone's life who is a generator the only truth is the truth that comes through response. Now, not only is the sacral center a very powerful motor, but it is an articulating motor. And what I mean by that is that the sacral center makes sounds. Sounds. There is an arrogance in the vanity of humans that blinds them to the simple and the true. We have developed great skills of articulation, great skills of language. And at the expense of that, we ignore another form of communication. 70% of humanity are generators, and all generators express themselves through sounds. This is their only truth. They express themselves through sounds, and only sounds in response represent their real expression. Do you love me? That's the truth. That's the expression. And everything about the nature of a generator goes against everything they've been taught culturally from the moment they came into the world. They're here to respond, and the moment they come into the world, nobody recognizes that. And so they end up never getting a chance to know who they are. There are two energy types, manifestors and generators. Manifestors are about 9% of the human population, and manifestors, because they're the only type that can initiate by design, is that they set all the rules. The rules that say things, and you can get it on your own, and mind, and you can initiate things, and that's what you're supposed to do. It's a whole set of propaganda that has filtered into our culture and the way in which we operate in our civilization. Now think about what that's like for a generator. When a generator comes into the world, a generator is here to respond, and basically what that means is that a generator is here to be asked. They're here to be asked. It is the inherent right of generators to decide yes or no about anything in life, which means that they're here to respond. Yet when parents have a generator child, there's a great confusion that takes place. The confusion is that the child has so much energy. That is, it appears that the child is very powerful. That is the aura sense of the connection to the child. And of course they're right. Generators are the most powerful beings on the planet. They carry within them this extraordinary force. And so when the parent says to the child, clean up your room, and the child doesn't move, there's a real problem there. They want the child to be a manifester. And it doesn't matter whether it's clean up your room or be a good girl or be a good boy or don't do this or don't do that. It doesn't matter what it is. From the moment that they come into the world, they're being conditioned to be a manifester, and they're not. And they're not. And every time they try to be a manifester, they suffer humiliation because they end up failing. And nobody fails more, nobody quits more than generators. Because from the moment they come into the world, they've been negatively conditioned. They have not been asked. It's not a response. They've been told to initiate. They've been told to look after themselves, clean up your own life, take care of business, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You go out there and do it. It's all lies. And you fell for it because you had no choice. Because nobody around you knew any better. You don't grow up being a generator. A generator only knows what is right or wrong in response for itself. Only. And if you're not responding, everything that you do in this life, everything you have contact with in this life is incorrect for you. And guess what you get? You get the deepest theme of all generators, frustration. It's just frustrating. And you can't seem to stay with things, and you can't seem to make it work. And there's always a part of you out of frustration that just wants to get out. Get out of the job, get out of the relationship, get out of the life, whatever the case may be. And it started when you were babies. Our bodies take 7 years to recycle them. Most of the cells in the body are transformed in 7 years. For adults, adult generators, it's a ordeal. to be deconditioned. It's not like I can tell you the truth and expect you'll all do it. I don't. The reality is that you all have lives, and the lives that you have are built on a lie. They're built on who you are not, yet it's the only thing you know. And it's extremely difficult for any of you to contemplate giving that up and replacing it with something that you truly do not know. You can. You can discover who you are. You can. It's one of the most incredible things about mechanics is that mechanics does bring solutions. There are things that you can do to find out who it is that you are. But I want you to understand very clearly, you have no idea. And it's the deepest frustration that lies within you, and you're not here to be quitters. You're not. You're here to be the perfection of mastery, and mastery is based on going through things stage by stage by stage by stage and staying with it until mastery takes place. And you all know how hard it is for you to stay with anything, let alone get to the place of mastery, because you didn't enter into those things correctly. You didn't enter into them as yourself. That's the whole point of all this. Strategy transforms your life. Everything about defining who you are is about decision making. And decision making is really one of the keys to being awake. It's all about defining your nature. You define your nature through the decisions that you make. Yet to understand that all sacral beings are here to respond, that the moment in their earliest conditioning, when they come into the world, when they're children, as long as they're not being asked, they're not able to develop who they really are. They're just not. And this happens to all generators, that is, all generators other than those that may be fortunate enough to be raised differently. I have 3 generator children. And I don't tell them what to do. I mean, I ask. Sometimes I have to ask a lot. But I don't tell them what to do. Because you see, as long as I'm asking them, not only am I showing them a great deal of respect, because that is what they are here for, but I'm also providing them with an opportunity to define who they are from themselves. They're the ones who say yes or no. They're the ones who make the decision. The decision is not imposed upon them. And this is something that is so essential. This knowledge is not for adults. Sorry, but it's true. It's really hard for adults to decondition. Most of you will just walk away saying it's interesting. You know, this knowledge is for children. It's so that they don't have to be conditioned, that they don't have to go through a life in which they cannot live out who they are. And that if they do get the chance in this life to enter into some kind of path, that they don't have to go through years and years and years of deconditioning in order to rediscover what was there right from the beginning. And you were denied that. And it's not like there's anything to blame. Things are what they are. The only opportunity that you have to transform your life is to experiment with the strategy of what it is to be a generator. And to experiment with that strategy, it's not simply about you waiting to be asked. I'm sure that most of you have heard that. It's not about that. There's something else that's absolutely necessary at the beginning of your process, because you have a gift, and it's a gift that you can use. And the gift is that you have a chance, better than anybody else, to know who you are. You really do. And there's a way to find out. The enemy is the mind. You all have this enemy. After all, the nature of decision-making for you is very clear. It's a sacral response. Your mind does not appreciate that. Your mind is convinced that it's the one that's in charge. It's your mind that's in control of all of your fears. You know, when I tell generators that life is here for them and all they have to do is wait and it'll come, I know that look in their eye. That look in their eye that says, yeah, that sounds nice. Yeah, that sounds nice, but I don't believe a damn word you're saying, because I know from my experience that life isn't like that, and blah, 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 and who's going to want me, and who's going to come to me, and where is all that going to come from, and so forth and so on. There are all these inherent fears, and it's all resident in the mind, and the mind wants to hold on to making decisions. That is, the mind doesn't like being placed aside. Please recognize that the mind is wonderful, but its job is research. Its job is research and not decision making. All of the decisions that are going to matter for you in your life are going to have to come out as a response. And the first thing that you have to do as adults, in order to overcome your enemy, is that you have to co-opt your enemy. In other words, you've got to get the enemy into the experiment with you. This is very important. And it's all about the discovery of who you are. This is the whole point. You need to find out as quickly as possible who you are. And in doing that, you're going to be able to put your mind in its proper place. Not only are you going to be able to put your mind in its proper place, but your mind is actually going to enjoy playing the game with you. And oh, will that be a relief. Yes, I know that you're here to respond. And yes, I know that that is a theme of your strategy. But I have learned a lot by caring and dealing with generators for 15 years. And what I really know is that until you get to that point where your mind is convinced that this really is more than just something interesting, only then are you really going to be able to respond. And the key to that is that there's a mechanism, there's a way in which you can discover and meet yourself and do it right away. There are many, many generators who have a defined throat. That is, the throat is where we articulate in language. And for most generators who have a defined throat, it's their throat that dominates in the way in which they communicate. And that the sacral presence, even when it is strong sacral presence, is still overridden by their capacity to articulate. What's important in this technique of starting your process as a generator and coming to grips with meeting yourself, or beginning that process of meeting yourself, what's important is that it's response, and it's no-think response. In other words, the person that is asking you the questions, the whole point is don't think about the answer. It's all about your response, and it's your response in the moment. And whether that response is going to be the classic sacral sound, or whether it's a voice accompanied by the feeling, the reality is that it's the response that matters, and the description of the response, or at least the way in which or what the response leads to. You can't imagine how important this is for your mind. It's your mind that will stop you from becoming yourself, and only your mind that can stop you. And at the moment that the mind is curious, the moment that the mind discovers that you may not be what it's always thought you were, is the moment that the mind actually becomes an ally. It's like, let's do this again next week and see what else we can find out. Let's go to the supermarket, and so forth and so on. Every aspect of life is impacted by the nature of what you are. And one of the most difficult things for generators is food. It's food. Most generators don't know what's good for them, and they don't eat what's good for them. They just go along with whatever the generalized propaganda happens to be. Think about what it's like to be a generator. You all know this, and you go to a restaurant. Now, what happens to you when you go to the restaurant? You tell the waiter or the waitress what you want. You play manifester. I want that tonight. I want that. I want that. You think you can digest that properly? You cannot. It wasn't for you. And this is the way you eat, and this is the way you love, and this is the way you work. And you have a hard time digesting all of that. You really do. You see, if you're a generator and you want to know what's good for dinner, have somebody tell you what the selection is in a restaurant. What do you have tonight? We've got this. Well, we have this. No, we have this. Aha. That's good for you. We have all kinds of propaganda about food, enormous propaganda about food. Go with a friend, the same friend you go through this process with. Go with that friend to the supermarket and find out what you really like to eat, what you want to bring home, what you want to feed yourself, your family, your children with. You'd be astonished. See, you don't know who you are. And at the moment you begin this journey of recognizing that what I'm telling you is true, you really don't know who you are. That the moment you start this journey of discovering who you are, you can have a chance at really becoming awake. You have a chance at really being able to live out the strategy of what it is to be a generator. Because you see, the whole point is for you to be who you are. And when you are who you are, there is an incredible reward. It's a great reward. It's called getting your terms. You know? Generators don't know that. Generators don't know at all what it's like to get your terms. You know, you're always thankful that somebody sends you a cookie. You know, this is about getting your terms. You have no idea how powerful it is to be a generator. Look, if somebody wants something from you, and you all know that, when somebody wants something from you, you've got the advantage. I mean, you have the advantage. You know, if somebody wants me, I've got the advantage. I can say yes, or I can say no. It's not up to them and their wanting. It's up to me. And in that way, I get to pick and choose, don't I? Well, this is you. And you have to understand that. You see, you have a resource inside of you that everybody wants to take advantage of. That's why you're slaves. And the whole idea about waking up to being yourself is that you become the best rewarded slave you can be. You get it on your terms. Yes, I'll help you build that, but I want this and this and this and this. And if you don't give me that, you don't get my sacral slavery. Sorry. You want me as a lover? Yes, but. Oh, yeah. You want me as a friend? Yes, but. You want me as a colleague? Yes, but. Now, generators don't know anything about that. And that's their glory. It's what you're all about. And you see, the moment that you're getting things on your terms, you're a great provider. You can stay with what it is that you do. You can transcend the frustration of what it is to be a generator. You can transcend feeling stuck. You can keep on going in a process of mastery and really get to what you're supposed to be. You're builders. You're creators. You're enormous forces. And you can only do that as yourself, and you can only do that getting things on your terms, on your terms. You all know what it's like to initiate. Then everybody else gets you on their terms. The times that you want something and you try to get something and there's somebody else over there going, yeah, yes, but. And how frustrating that is. That's not what you're here for. It truly isn't. You're here to decide. You're here to decide. And in deciding, you get what's correct for you. One of the most difficult things and one of the most frustrating things for generators is the lack of comfort with their energy. Frustrated with their energy, not being fulfilled in their energy. the kind of thing where a generator goes out for a walk to sort of get the energy out of the system and comes back and still feels agitated, it still feels the energy there. Most sacral beings have real problems with consistency in the way in which their energy operates, and the solution to it is actually very simple. But again, like everything else for the generators, they've been so deeply conditioned by manifestor mythos that it's very hard for them to break these patterns. Manifestors, as an example, manifestors are designed to go to sleep before they're tired. Manifestors are designed to go to sleep before they're tired. So that's the way we end up culturally, creating that structure, that generalization. Now, there's nothing more devastating for a generator than to try to go to sleep before they're tired. It's horrible. And of course, it starts when they're very young. I have a 3.5-year-old that goes to sleep after me, generator. The reality is that generators can only go to sleep when they're exhausted. And only then can they wake up fresh. Only then can they wake up with the proper rhythm and energy flow. If they do not go to sleep when they're exhausted, they end up with physical problems. Physical problems, whether those problems are in the back, whether those problems are in the leg, wherever the case may be, they will end up with physical problems, and it's all about something very simple. But then again, we have all this conditioning. The lover that says, what do you mean you're staying up? Come to bed. It's time to go to sleep. Please do not sleep in the same room as your lover. It's insane. It's not about sex, and it's not about love, but it's not correct. Everybody requires the integrity of their own aura. And if you're a sacral being and your lover goes to sleep at 10:30 at night after the damn news and you're still burning, burn on. And it doesn't matter how late you burn on, by the time you're ready to quit, you're really ready to sleep. And don't listen to all this nonsense about how much time you need asleep. I don't know who figures this out, but I know that they really don't know what's going on. The reality is for a generator that when a generator goes to sleep exhausted, if they wake up naturally, other than somebody waking them up, if they wake up naturally, whether it's 3 hours later or 4 hours later or 5 hours later, isn't going to make any difference to them and is not going to be unhealthy. Not. But they have to go to sleep exhausted. One of the things you discover when you begin to discover who you are as a generator is that you are unique. You don't fit into all the propaganda that you've taken in. Don't misunderstand me. When you go through this first experiment of trying to find out who you are through a response mechanism, it doesn't mean you're going to deny everything. I like to tease a little bit. It's not like you're going to say to Harry. You may say you will see that you'll be able to distill those things that are legitimate for you and those things that are not. And you'll be able to get a real clear picture of who you are and what the potential is there. See, you don't know that. When I tell a generator that it will come to you, they think I'm giving them a mystical storyline. And I'm not. And I'm not. It really works that way. But you don't know what it means to have your aura. You don't know. You don't know how powerful it is. The New Age is full of people that talk about auras, but they don't know what they're really saying. These things are very powerful. If you're a generator and you're in a group with some people and you don't say anything, guess what? They're going to ask you. They really will. You don't have to say to them, I'm a generator, from now on you got to ask me everything. They just think you're nuts. All you have to do is experiment with being who you are. That generator aura of yours is really something. And if you don't say anything, they will not let you get away with it. And when you answer, then you answer as yourself. Imagine what that's like. Imagine you have a piece of information that's so special that it can change somebody's life. And you go up to that person and you tell them. They didn't hear you. You have that all the time in your life. You have something important to tell somebody and you blurt it out and you tell them. They don't hear you. They're not interested. They will resist you. You're not being a generator. And when they come to you and they ask you something and you respond, they're listening. They're paying attention. You know, you haven't had any respect. Nobody's been listening to you. It's about time that, you found out who you were and started to not only get the respect from the outside, but your own self-respect about who you are, free of all that conditioning propaganda. My 10-year-old son is a generator and he's very social. And he always wants to make telephone calls and call up his friends. And he knows he's a generator, and we've talked about that and how it's easier for him if they call him because it's going to work better. And because I don't make anything a rule, I just ask him to try it out. He's learned to see that, in fact, when people call him, it does turn out to be a lot better than when he tries to call them. Usually when he tries to call them, there's nobody there. Anyway, but one day he's musing about that, I guess, and he said to me, well, look, he said, one of my best friends is also a generator. And if he's waiting for me to call and I'm waiting for him to call, then we're never going to talk to each other. And of course, this is something that all generators at one point or another tell me about. Well, what about this? Okay, so let's understand that. And it's one of the misconceptions about generator strategy as well. This idea that generator strategy is all about only waiting to respond. Yes, that is the dynamic of it. That is true. Yet at the same time, we are not isolated in the world, and that the mind itself has all kinds of stuff that goes through. The reality is that for the generator, their strategy is about decision making. In other words, what's important for the generator is not like in the suggestion I said where you don't start the conversation. Now that's so that you can feel that energy. That's an experiment for you. But you're not always going to be in that situation because we are helpless. When you're with other people and they activate your throat or they get things going, whatever the case may be, what's important for you to understand that this strategy of response is about decision making only. Let me give you an example. And obviously, in order to live out this example, you have to have somebody who plays the game with you. Okay, so let's say you're two generators and you're sitting together. And one generator says, I'm hungry, let's go out to the Italian restaurant, what do you think? And the other generator goes, uh-huh. Now look, that's okay for that generator. They had a chance to respond, and they went, uh-huh. But they have a responsibility now to the one who asked them, And they have to say to the one who asked them, do you really want to go? And half of the time, to the incredible surprise of the generator, they'll go, uh-uh. And the other one saying, well, you started this. You see, because we're not in charge of what's passing through. What you can be in charge of is the decision that you have to make. And just because something goes through your head doesn't mean it's your truth. It doesn't. Doesn't mean you're here to act on it. Doesn't mean you're here to do anything about it. What it means is that when it comes to any kind of decision in your life, the decision has to be a response. You're not always going to be in situations where you're just having things, coming at you and you have the classic capacity to be able to respond to it. You're also part of the world and things are going to move through you. But just because you say you love to go to, whatever for a vacation, doesn't mean you should go unless somebody says to you, do you really want to go? So you hear whether that's true or not. The same thing with a lover, the same thing with a friend. The fact that there's this idea going through your head that you really want to be with somebody, You have to see that that only is going to work when it's a response. It's only going to work when your decision is a response. If you're a sacral being asked whether, you're in love with somebody is one of the most important questions you're ever going to get. Because it gives you the opportunity to make a clean decision. And so much of the turmoil in human beings' lives are relationships. You all have an incredible capacity to be very clear and honest in relationships. Because if you enter into a relationship correctly, you're not going to meet the major negatives that most people have in their relationships. And at the moment that you're responding out of yourself, it's your true self that wants to be with that other being. And it's your power that's saying yes. Not a concept, but your power. So very important, don't get confused about this. I'm not telling you to take an oath of silence. It's not the way it works. And I'm not saying to you that you won't be in those situations where the forces of conditioning are bringing you to initiation. But you have to see that you have to be able to stand back and wait for clarity. That is, stand back and wait to hear what your real response is. And it's so important for you. Before you act, you have to be clear in your response. And that's the key. Once you're making correct decisions, everything else falls into place. In the time that we have left together, I want to give you some important information about the difference in various kinds of generators. Not all of you fit into the same subgroup. That is, you're all generators. You all operate out of the same strategy. All of that is the same. But the way in which you appear to be after you enter into a strategy is something that is quite different. And the basic difference... No, it's all right. It's all right. The first thing is to understand the way in which the sacral really works. That is, it's a motor and it's not a gearbox. Now that's very important. That is, when you're looking at the body graph, this is the prime motor of the body. Okay, it's like the engine in a car. It's the prime motor of the body. But up here in the throat is where the gear shift is. This is the thyroid system. This is metamorphosis. So the whole thing to recognize about the nature of being a generator is that in being a generator, basically what you are is that you're a very powerful motor that can't change gears by yourself. It's very important to just grasp that. And this is one of the basic dilemmas of the generator. That's why generators suffer from frustration. The typical thing for a generator is it gets into something and it's in it and it's in it and it's in it, and of course you've got all that generator juice and they're working and working and working and working, but suddenly they realize it's not getting better. It's not improving, it's not advancing, whatever the case may be, because there is a tendency in generators, because it's a prime motor and not the gearbox, to get stuck. And it's this getting stuck that leads to the sensation of frustration and leads ultimately to why generators quit so often. They quit so often because when they get into this stage of being stuck, most of the time they got into the thing incorrectly to begin with. In other words, they didn't get in there as a matter of making a decision out of response. And at the moment they get into that phase of getting stuck, where they don't seem to improve, or it doesn't seem to get any better, whether it's their job, their love relationship, their friendships, their art, whatever it is, that's the moment that they're ready to quit. And it's because of the very nature of the way in which the sacral center operates. These are called pure generators. And the reason they're called pure generators is, like all generators, they have a defined sacral, but either their throat centers are open, the throat centers are white, or if the throat center is colored in, it's not connected to a motor. In other words, there's no manifesting potential. So these are pure generators. Now look, think about how this works for the pure generator. Somebody comes up to this generator and says to this generator, would you like to learn this, play this, do this, whatever the case may be. And let's say this generator answers with their throat. And that's what most people will do. They will answer with their throat. And that throat is going to say, yes, I'd love to do that. Okay, so the moment that they start doing that, what has to do it is the sacral. And it wasn't the sacral that was asked. And it wasn't the sacral that responded. And the moment that the sacral isn't directly asked, there is nothing a pure generator can do to stay with things. Because that sacral center is going to reach a plane in which it gets stuck. It gets stuck at a certain place. Now, if you haven't asked the sacral to get involved, the sacral will not be able to transcend that. It just won't. You see, you don't stay stuck. It's one of the things about generators. If they don't quit, if it's the sacral center that made the commitment, they will see at some point or another, okay, they'll suddenly recognize that they've moved on to another level. And it's just the way it is. And generators are here truly to be masters. They're here to go like a virtual reality game, level by level by level by level by level until they master the whole thing. The secret for them as a pure generator, the secret is simply make sure it's your sacral that's responding. In other words, make sure that the decision you're making is made with your sacral, and then you'll discover something. You'll still get stuck. You'll still feel frustration, but you won't quit. You won't quit. And then you'll get to the next level, and you'll go through the same process. And as long as you have entered into it correctly, slowly you'll begin to see your process. By mastering things, it means that each stage has to be looked at in detail, experienced in detail, understood in detail. That's why generators make such great slaves. They can really be great workers. Now, the whole thing is you have to work for your benefit. And you have to understand that that feeling of being stuck or that frustration that arises, it's usually coming when you're near the end of that level. And all you have to do is wait, and you'll see you'll get to the next level. 70% of humanity are generators. 35% of humanity are pure generators. That is, half of the generator population are pure generators like this and function according to what I described. Here is the other half. And the other half, they're called manifesting generators. And the reason that they're called manifesting generators is that they have the sacral center defined, but they also have the throat connected to a motor. In other words, they have both a generative core, but they also have in their design a manifesting potential. They operate very differently. And they operate very differently because it should be or could be clear to you that the manifesting generator is more susceptible to manifesting propaganda than the pure generator. In other words, the manifesting generator, with parents that are telling it what it should do and so forth and so on, that because it has a manifesting capacity, it goes along with all of that. In other words, basically what happens to the manifesting generator is that it lives out its manifesting potential at the price of its true strategy. In other words, not only is it conditioned to be like manifestors, but it is in some ways similar to manifestors, and they get deeply, deeply lost in the manifestor process. The other thing is that the moment that you have a motor connected to the throat, you don't have a theme of frustration, but you have a theme of anger. In other words, that manifesting generators not only get frustrated thematically, but they get angry as well. And of course, that can be a lethal combination when one's life isn't going correctly. And of course, for manifesting generators, it's even more difficult. It's even more difficult to break that conditioning pattern because there is this aspect within them that can really do things. Whole problem with that is there's no way they can do them until they respond first as a decision. And not only that, the way they do it is not satisfying, and they have to understand what's happening to them. When the throat is connected to a motor other than the sacral, that is manifesting. And what that means is that there are no graduated stages, that there is a platform for taking off, and then there is simply a geometry of moving through. But the moment that the sacral center is involved is the moment that we have this stage by stage process that's at the core of the way in which the sacral works. When these two forces are combined in a chart, the sacral center dominates. It is the body's prime motor. The sacral center, in any way connected to the throat, doesn't lead to a platform and a geometry of movement, but what it leads to is a geometry of movement in which things are missed. Essential ingredients are bypassed. In other words, that there is a breakdown in the way in which metamorphosis actually works. Think about it this way. I'm a boss and I hire two people to do precisely the same job. Precisely the same job. One of them's a pure generator, one of them is a manifesting generator. Now both of them have a quitting moment. The pure generator has a quitting moment at the beginning of their work, and the manifesting generator has a quitting moment near the end of their work. And this is how it works. The pure generator gets into the job. Let's say that they get into the job as the not self, because that's what's prevalent. So they get into a job that's not correct for them. So we know they're going to get stuck, and we know they're going to get frustrated. That would be the moment that they would quit. This job is not for me. I go try something else. Let's say that we have a pure generator that enters into that job correctly. That pure generator entering into that job correctly will go through the first stage of learning whatever that job is. And we'll go through that process. We'll get stuck. There'll be frustration that they're not really getting it. They'll wonder about whether they should be there or not. But because they entered into it correctly, they will stay with it and they will eventually get to the next stage. And slowly but surely, this is the other myth, generators want to be fast. Slowly but surely, they will go stage by stage by stage. And when they get to the end of, let's say, a year, they are competent in their work and enormously valuable. Okay. Now let's take the manifesting generator. And let's take the not self manifesting generator. The not self-manifesting generator decides that it's going to do that job. And it starts the job and it immediately starts shooting along. In other words, it skips stages. It's only interested in getting down to the pure manifesting. You know, let me get to the point where I'm actually doing my job rather than learning it. And they have a gift, because they have a manifesting gift, of racing ahead. And then all of a sudden, near the finish, somebody comes up to them and says, "Excuse me, we have a problem. This was missed." That's when they quit, because they don't want to go back and do it again. Okay. Now let's say that you have a manifesting generator that enters into it properly. They enter into it properly. They race ahead. They're much faster than what appears to be the pure generator at dealing with whatever the complexities are and integrating the work. And they get down towards the end and somebody says to them, "Excuse me, you missed something." And they go, "Yeah, I know, I better go back and do it." And by the time you get to the end of 12 months, the end of that year, they are both competent at the same level. Now this is the difference between them. So one of the things to understand as a manifesting generator, that if you don't enter into things correctly, you're going to be haunted all your life by the things you missed, the things you overlooked, the things you didn't pay attention to, because those are the things that are going to come back and hurt you. Those are the things that are going to come back and embarrass you. Those are the things that are going to come back and they're going to reduce your level or your sense of self-worth. It's the anger that is the most difficult. The anger is truly unnatural for generators. And the nature of the anger in the manifesting generator is that the anger is there the moment that they miss something. This is what disturbs them the most. And of course, the not self manifesting generator is always leaving things out. Now, it's very important to understand that that is not incorrect when they're correct. And it's not really that they're skipping anything or bypassing anything. They have a different way in which they move through those levels. You know, it doesn't look like the pure generator that really goes level by level by level to build its competency. But it's also working in that way. It's just an unusual configuration of it. In other words, it goes to, a certain point and then it jumps over something. Now, it's supposed to. It's not a failing. It's not a problem. Whenever I tell that to a manifesting generator, they say, oh, yeah, I know, and blah, blah, blah. How can I get rid of it? Don't get rid of it. It's not about getting rid of it. It's what you are. And it's not a failing that you go over those things. What it's really saying to you is you can only really deal with those things once you've gotten to a certain point, and then you can come back, and then you can really absorb them. And at the moment that the manifesting generator understands that that's them, that's the way you work, then it takes away the burden of any kind of judgmentation. That's what human beings do. They're always judging themselves against whatever the generalized standard happens to be. And of course, we have people who will say that if you're learning a job and you skip things, you're bad. This is a mistake, this is not correct. Well, it's not true. And of course, what you get from manifesting generators is that they get very uncomfortable with this jumping over of things because they end up feeling inadequate. They end up feeling like, that they can't really do the job. And of course, they get to that point where they're simply going to quit. I didn't do it properly and I missed all those things and I'm bad because I didn't focus, I didn't concentrate, there must be something wrong with me, blah, 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 blah. It's not true, it's not true. It's the way you're meant to be. It's the way you're meant to be. See, everybody who tries to change you, everybody who tries to condition you, this is the enemy. It's not about not being a manifesting generator. That's the whole point. That's how you were messed up in the first place. That's how you were conditioned in the first place, conditioned away from being who you were. And manifesting generators were deeply conditioned to be manifestors. They've been taught to be angry, and angry is not good for their form. Frustration is what's natural for the generator. That's natural because built into the generator is the recognition that they can get to the very best of things. I don't want to begin to sound like some schmaltzy motivator to tell you how special you are. My interest in generators is that generators will change the world, nobody else. Nobody else. This is the whole point. The whole point is that when you stop being the slaves, you start directing the way things work. You start taking control of your own lives. And at the moment that you realize that what you are is correct, it's correct. What anybody is correct. And if you live that out, you'll see that it's correct for you. It's okay if you're a manifesting generator to skip this and that. It's okay. You have to be ready to go back and fill in the blanks afterwards. But that's your process. And it's okay. And nobody has a right to take that away from you. And nobody has a right to condition you away from what is your nature. There's nothing worse that a human being can do. You have to accept the way in which you operate. You have to accept the vehicle. Everything that every spiritual teacher has taught is about the nature of surrender. Surrender. And there's all these explanations and there's all this nice spiritual literature and blah, blah, blah. And they've all told you to surrender. Nobody ever told you how. That's what human design is. It's a mechanical way of being awake, which is my language for surrender. And being awake is normal. It's not special. It's being yourself. It's just being yourself. You have a greater opportunity to be yourself than anybody. You can find out right away, and you can see what it's like the moment that you make decisions based on response. But it's not about changing you. It's not about being different. It's just about being you. And if you're a manifesting generator, that's who you are. All you have to do is be correct in it, and you'll see it's your advantage. We've seen that of the mass of generators on the planet, the majority, the 70%, that it's divided in half between the pure generators, the manifesting generators. And remember, operating out of the same strategy. There is one more thing that has to be considered whenever you're looking at somebody's design and whenever you're dealing with somebody being a generator. Half of you are going to be emotional. That is, half of you are going to have emotional definition like this example here. This is a solar plex center. The emotional system colors our world. That's basically what it does. It colors our world, and it colors our world with hope and pain. The nature of the emotional system is that the emotional system as a motor operates in a wave. And the wave of the emotional system is a rising and a falling. And the way we experience the chemistry of the emotional system is that when that wave goes down, the world gets dark and we get uncomfortable and we become unhappy and we think life is not worthwhile and so forth and so on. And when we go up on that wave, we think everything is terrific and life has all kinds of potential and isn't it wonderful to be alive? And of course it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. It goes up and down forever, all your life. It doesn't stop. And there isn't anything that you can do about that. It doesn't matter what your homeopath, your guru, your surgeon, whatever. Nobody is going to be able to get rid of your emotional wave. You're going to spend your whole life going up and down. Now, the whole thing about having an emotional system defined in your design is that when that emotional system is colored in, it changes the way in which any strategy works regarding decision making. And the way in which it changes that is that the presence of the emotional system means that there is no truth in the now. The emotional system, when it's present in somebody's design, what that means is no truth in the now. You're in a wave. You're in a wave. And what that means is that the perception that you have when you're on the up end of the wave about somebody and the perception that you have when you're on the low end of the wave about that same person is very different. Emotional people get into trouble when they react in the moment. This is the only time that emotional people are in trouble, is in the moment they act in the moment, because there is no truth in the now. So you're at the high end of your wave and you say to somebody, I love you, let's go make love. When you get to the low end of your wave, you may not like the decision you had made. When you're at the low end of your wave, you can say, I've had enough of this job, stuff it, I'm going. And when you get to the high end of that wave, you may feel very bad about the fact that you lost your job and things are terrible and it actually wasn't that bad. That's the emotional system. And of course, out of that emotional system, out of making decisions in the now, that all emotional beings end up in a life that is littered with chaos. Littered with chaos. So if you're an emotional generator, one of the things you have to recognize about being an emotional generator is that any response that you have is a sample in the moment. It's a sample in the moment. Emotional beings are very special. They can make the other half of the world that isn't emotional deliriously, blissfully happy, or they can make them horrible and feel horrible. The emotional system is a very powerful thing. It is also something very special in terms of the way in which it operates, because it operates in a frequency that allows us to find a place that's called clarity. Clarity, to be clear. You see, the emotional being is taking pictures as they move through the wave. It's a way of seeing it. They're taking samples as they move along. And by the time that they have taken enough samples, they have the opportunity then to make a clear decision based on the sample. But they can't make a decision on one point. They can't. You're an emotional generator and somebody comes up to you and says, you know, I love you, I want you, I need you, blah, 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 whatever the story is. And in that moment, your sacral is going, What you really have to do is say, right now, it's yes. But you know, I'm emotional and I don't really know. Why don't you ask me again next week? Check with me later. Let me see where I'm at then. Because I may not have that. I may have certain questions. I may have certain doubts. Now, of course, when I tell that to emotional people, I know what they're thinking. They're thinking, you crazy? I finally have somebody come up to me and say that they want me, and I'm going to say, call me next week. I finally have somebody who's going to give me the job of a lifetime. I'm going to tell him to go away and call me next week. No. And the emotions are really powerful, eh? But you see, the only thing that's important for an emotional generator to understand is what my mother taught my sisters. Play hard to get. Play hard to get. This is the magic of being an emotional generator. If you think pure generators can get their terms, you should see what emotional generators can get. No, really think about it. You know, when somebody wants something from you, or you, and they come to you and you're a pure generator, yes, you get your terms. You do. But think about being an emotional generator and somebody wants you. And you go, well, yeah, it's kind of interesting. Give me a call next week. They don't run away. They don't. You don't have to worry about the fact that you just lost them. Oh, they get even hungrier for what they think they want. And by the time you get through that whole week, not only are they offering themselves to you, but they're bringing bonuses. You know? Because they really want to make sure this time that they're going to get the answer that they want. After all, your generators, they want their slave. Understanding the nature of mechanics simply allows you to operate correctly. That's what this stuff is all about. And the moment you experiment with operating correctly, you'll see you will get your rewards, regardless of the configuration. Until you stop allowing people to tell you what to do, you're going to stay slaves. It's as simple as that. You're not here to be told what to do. You weren't here to be told what to do by your parents. You're not here to be told what to do by your lovers or your friends. You're not here to be told what to do by your bosses or anybody else. You're here to be asked. You're not here to be told what to do. And as long as you accept and allow people to tell you what to do, you're going to be enslaved. And you're never really going to get what you deserve. You just won't. You see, one of the things about becoming yourself is that it's a selfish act. There's a lot of morality attached to that word. Generators are here to be selfish. They're here to be selfish about being themselves first. The moment that you can be yourself first, you can be of great value to others. There's no question about it. But you have to be true to what it is to be you. And the path of becoming a generator is disturbing for those people around you. It is. They don't want you to wake up. They don't want you to be yourself. They don't want you to be the one that says, don't tell me, ask me, and I don't know if I'm going to do it. They don't want that. And you all go back to your lives. You know, you all go back to the Maya that you're a part of. You all go back to being the not self and dealing with the frustration and the anger and all of the things that are caught up in not being who you are. It's so important. Next time somebody tells you what to do, there should be hackles going up on your back. They don't know me. They don't respect me. Because it's true. And you can let them know as a principle. Don't tell me. Ask me. Because that's one of the most important things you can begin with in this process of being yourself. To start this process of, being in charge instead of being told what to do. You've always been told what to do, and you still listen to it. From the way you were conditioned, to the culture that you belong to the way that you're educated, to the way that you're dealt with in the workplace, it doesn't matter. And all of that keeps you controlled, unhappy, but useful to the slave owners. It always amazes me how long human beings have been looking for a way to be at peace with themselves. And that at the end, what kind of an incredible joke it is, because it's simple. I mean, it's really simple. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to make decisions in response, you know. You don't have to sit on a bloody mountain for 15 years and do mantras. You know, you don't need all of that. It's just a mechanical mechanism. And the moment that you begin to experiment with that mechanism, what you'll see is it actually works. It actually works. And slowly but surely, people stop telling you what to do, and they start asking you whether you would like to do it or not. And that transforms your psyche, it transforms who you are as a being, and slowly but surely it transforms your life because it gives you greater and greater opportunities to define your own direction. Here in the body graph, coming out of the sacral center is a gate. It's the fifth gate. It's called the gate of waiting. It's a gate that is a universal gate that is in the design of all forms, and it is a gate of establishing genetic patterns. It's a gate that is part of the design of a single cell. Everything about the pattern of life, everything about the pattern of human life is generated by you. Everything. I am a manifester, and I am subject to the pattern that you create in the world because it's your pattern. And everybody else on this planet, all the other types, the three other types that do not have defined sacrals, all of them, because they are the minority, all of them are ruled by the pattern that you establish. If you are all living your not self and you're all being told what to do, that's the pattern. It's simply the pattern. And it will be the pattern for the rest of us. And if it's your pattern to be told what to do, and I'm a manifester with an open sacral, I will amplify that twice as strongly, and I will scream at you what to do, and you'll end up dealing with it and living with it. And that's not the way it's meant to be. You are the ones that can change the pattern. So much of my work has been dedicated to trying to get across to generators that it's really easy to wake up, and that would have such an enormous effect on humanity. Truly. Because the moment that the pattern is just simply changed to being asked rather than being told what to do, everybody will be influenced by that. Everybody. Because you are the heart of the pattern. You generate the pattern. You create the very world you live in. The true self in you can take that responsibility. That true self can transform the way in which the pattern works. So it's a simple formula. Find out who you are first. Really, take the chance of that experience to sit with somebody and to go through that process of being asked. Listen to your responses. You know, watch the revealing of something different, something you didn't expect. Begin to look at a profile of what you are. And then understand that the best decisions that you can make in this life will come out of response. And that if you only make your decisions out of response, you will see that you will immediately benefit from it. Now it's an experiment. Remember that. This is logical knowledge. You know, you have to go through the experiment because only then is it real. Now it's just a concept. It becomes real the moment that you see not only that it's viable, but it works and you like where it's taking you, because that's what it's all about after all. You, above all, undergo the greatest risk in awakening. That is, you really have to shed the life that you've had and the way that you've related to that life in order to see what you really are. And in becoming yourself doesn't mean that you leave behind lovers and friends and children and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't. Not necessarily. But it certainly will transform your relationship with them and them with you. But it's essential for you to begin the experiment. You are an energy type. And that means that every moment of every day, of every breath, you have an opportunity to experiment with response. Do so. I ask you that so that you have that opportunity to really find out what it's like to be you. and in the end, be able to contribute to a real transformation in the way in which all of us work with each other. Yeah, good luck. You know, it's a nice experience for me. This is the second time now that I sit with a room full of generators. It's an extraordinary energy. You know, I truly hope for all of you that you get to see the beauty of what you are and you get to live out your nature. And nice to share this with you.